zombie movie, book, television show, comic, video game.
Nation is one of the. My friends and I are cosplaying it on Saturday.
We're gonna have a good discussion.
I can see Twinkies causing a zombie apocalypse.
Is there anyone who doesn't generally like zombies but like this particular show because of the way they were portrayed? Or you guys all seen it? Zombie lovers. Yeah, kind of.
How many people have? Raise your hands if you've watched In the Flesh. Raise your hands if you haven't watched In the Flesh.
Oh.
Raise your hands if you're really confused because why are we talking about zombies? This is supposed to be a different panel.
I just walked in here because it was dark and it looked like you might have food, but now I don't see food, so I'm leaving. Right?
I think someone's having
Lunchtime or dinner time. What time is it? Nobody knows.
I'm going to Subway after this, so. No, not Subway. I'm going to Cold Stone after this. You all need to know that. Please don't stalk me.
If you know where the Cold Stone is, we're just going to follow you.
If you want ice cream. What?
So when's the brain eating contest?
Let's go to Cold Stone and pretend the ice cream is brains and be like, I'm sorry. Randy hates ice
First, we
cream.
need a volunteer.
It was at 1:30.
That's what I thought. It was like at 1:30.
Yeah, you get brain freeze.
See, this should have been first, then that.
That would be fun. What did they make the brains? Did they make it out of Jello?
Jello. It was just straight Jello this
That's what I
year.
guessed.
What was it?
I don't even like Jello.
Last year they mixed like some cream or something in and made it really thick and really difficult to eat. And there was quite a few phases of almost needing a bucket. I shot it last year. Now I swear there's some figures there.
Oh.
I was like, awesome, dude. Yeah, come on.
And you really look like a
Shouldn't let it
zombie.
have the circus peanut stuff.
Oh god.
So anyway, close enough. So I guess we'll start, even though we kind of sort of started. So, hi guys, welcome to In the Flesh, Zombie Discrimination. I'm Megan.
I'm Jill.
I'm Samantha. I'm Molly.
And we like In the Flesh. So if you haven't watched it, you are probably best at summarizing since you watched
Okay,
it.
so basically in this kind of zombie world, it's based in Lancashire, England, in a fictional town. So, you know, it's kind of European-centric in the sense of the way that it's set up initially. So we have, unlike some of the other zombie kind of anthologies that we've seen, that these are, they're called, oh my gosh.
Called Rotter.
Partially deceased syndrome sufferers. Sorry, wow. Just
We watched so many zombie
complete
complete
break. I was like, I have all these other things
Which
that I
one
need
is
to talk
which
about.
now? Walker or something?
So this explores kind of what would be after the apocalypse. If we have something, so we have this rising, we have these zombies, but then what happens if these people can be rehabilitated into society, and what would that look like? So it's kind of a little bit different in terms of, you know, you see all of these mindless kind of, you know, hordes of people coming after you, and it's terrifying. But In the Flesh kind of adds the human element to the zombies. So you kind of follow this Kieran Walker, who's on the screen, him and his family. So he's a partially diseased syndrome sufferer. Every time I do this, I say PTSD, and I know it's a different thing, and I need to not say that, so I always try to keep myself from saying that, but instead I just kind of sit here awkwardly and go, what am I saying? So you follow him and his family, and how this zombie discrimination kind of follows him, in that there are people in this town who have been hailed as war heroes because they were able to, yes, and we have some lovely examples here.
Human volunteer force.
They wear these cool armbands.
Yeah, so basically those people that they're dressed up as volunteered during the zombie uprising to kill zombies and like keep their town safe, especially, you know, in the smaller towns, don't have all the like militia and stuff. So also that's interesting, which we'll talk about soon, but his sister joined that. So it's interesting when he comes back. But basically they find not quite a cure, but sort of like, what is it, like a medicine?
Neurotriptyline, which they're able to inject into the back
Yeah.
of their neck.
So it's, what would that be called? Like, you know, like it's
a daily dosage.
Yeah, like a daily dose that you have to take that will keep you good, but you won't ever be fully cured, but at least you'll, you know, be not eating people. So,
As long as you keep taking it, and you don't take any blue oblivion.
which is exciting because blue oblivion is basically like a drug that when they take it, reverts them back to their extreme zombie form.
Untreated state.
So those guys are exciting too, and we'll also talk about them. So yeah, I guess we'll basically like start talking about each character and how they have to do with discrimination. That's good.
So we wanted to kind of frame this a little bit. A lot of zombie panels, you kind of get very like dramatic, which is great and fun. But we wanted to kind of draw this into a lot of pop culture reflects life. And so it's interesting to kind of take this and look at what issues are they talking about. Zombies are awesome and we love zombies and we don't want to overshadow that. But there are also kind of interesting life issues and interesting things that are happening concurrently with these pieces of fiction. So, sorry I interrupted your character discussion.
Yeah, so I guess let's talk about Kieran. Well, I'll go down. And so how does Kieran basically, he's basically like a representative for a person who is discriminated, whether it's based on your skin color, your religion, your sexual identity, which actually also applies to him.
Or gender identity.
Gender identity, like, you know, I'm sure we all know some kind of either ourselves or some other people who have just been discriminated against because of one or more qualities that we have. So he's sort of like, as the main character and as a zombie person, he's like our main representative of that person that we're supposed to feel a connection with, because we have others, but they're not all supposed to be connected with. So yeah, you guys can go ahead and talk about the different kinds of things he faced. Like, for example, like I said, his sister had joined that human volunteer force. So when he comes back and is cured, it's a little bit awkward. But yeah, let's go ahead and compare. Who wants to start with him? Compare like his parents. Like, say if somebody came out, anything, any discrimination.
Oh, with cute?
Yes.
Oh,
Do you want me to start?
yeah.
Okay. So Kieran's parents. So say you're a person who's just come out, which he is gay, by the way. So that's also an interesting additional thing that he gets to deal with. And you know, small towns aren't always that open to anything. So his parents would be a good example of the kind of parents that don't quite understand, but they still want to be supportive of their son. So obviously this can apply to a lot of different things nowadays. But like they try, but they just don't quite, they're like they don't quite get the zombie side. They want him. So like how you guys see them here with their like the pale eyes and the like grayish skin is basically what they look like. So they have to wear makeup to blend in with society, and they're given contacts, makeup, hair dye, you know, whatever to make them look alive. And so his parents always want him to be wearing that. But it's not just because they're like, oh, we don't want you to like, we don't want to think of you at all as a zombie. They want him to be safe, because there are people like the Human Volunteer Force who are still have a grudge, even though, you know, they're like, okay, well, these zombies aren't quite the same, but at the same time, they're like, we basically had to fight these guys for, I don't know exactly how long it lasted until they found that sort of cure thing, but, you know, it's still kind of like in your mind when you had to fight these guys for long. It doesn't necessarily matter to all of them that, oh, they might be human now, but they're still zombies at heart or whatever. So his parents are more afraid of that, so they want him to fit in. So, you know, we might know people like that who like might care about someone, but they don't want them to show that side of themselves, like whatever it is, their religion, their something they identify as, because they're afraid for them, not because they're like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be identifying as that, but like they're afraid that if they do that, they'll get hurt. So, you want to talk about a different person?
So we also have my favorite character is Amy. So she's
On the left.
Yes. In case you couldn't tell. She's kind of an interesting character because she's very much fringe in the sense that she's also a zombie, but she's not afraid to be a zombie. She kind of embraces it. She doesn't wear her makeup. She doesn't care about her contacts. She doesn't care if people are like, why aren't you kind of conforming to society? So it's an interesting character to kind of look at the influence she has on Kieran in the sense of, you should be proud of your identity. This is something that is now a part of you, whether you wanted it to be or not, that you're going to have to deal with. So, I embrace myself because, this is just something I'm going to have to live with. So if I can't live with it, how do I live with myself? So she's kind of a really interesting, positive light, very quirky, very, very fun, but you do see also some of the side of the way people treat her, and there are people that affect her when they say things, that are negative, that are hurtful, but she kind of is still very much embraces herself. So it's kind of, when we talk about different groups of people who identify as whatever, you see that, of course, in populations of, I'm proud to be whatever, and you should be too, because there's nothing wrong with it. And then you have other people that are like, this is me, but we don't need to talk about it, and both, there's nothing wrong with either one of those. But, just kind of seeing that diversity represented in a show like In the Flesh, in the context of zombies, is a really unique way to characterize it.
Wait, I don't remember. Or the first one. The first one. Rick? Rick, thank you. Do you know his dad's
So
name?
bad with names.
That one mean guy's dad. Not mean guy. The mean dad.
Bill.
Yeah,
Okay.
'cause
Yeah, so, whoa. So, for those of you who've seen the show, I feel like this is one of those classic examples of like what makes a monster and what makes man type of story, because again, zombies are thought of as like classically monsters, and people get hung up on like looks and how they have to change their appearance to fit into society. But then there's the question of, is it actually their deeds? Because with the group that they have defending their town against the zombies, Bill, I believe, Bill is, I think, one of the most extreme men against the zombies, and he just like does not believe they're human at all anymore. They're dead to him. They're pretty much like, they are monsters no matter how they look or anything. So in one of the earlier episodes, they wanted to illustrate this very clearly, and they had him and his group take this elderly woman out and shoot her in front of her husband. And one of the things I thought was very interesting about the zombie thing is that a lot of the people who have their family members back, they're actually very relieved because it's somebody that they previously thought was dead was come back to life. And when you think about that, it's like you would accept them no matter what. So even like things that maybe they might not have accepted before, like, so he basically, it seemed like he had mercy for a moment, and then he shoots her in front of like everyone who's come out to see what's the issue, and it's just really painful to watch. But then it turns out that this guy, Bill, who's very, seems very
Extremist.
Yeah, extremist and religious, I guess. He is the father of the guy that Kieran likes. And it turns out it's just really hard for Kieran, especially when this guy finds out that his own son is PTS. Thank you. PTS suffer, because then he's like in denial that his son is one of them, because he just goes around shooting the ones that he knows of in the town just because they're zombies. And now his son is back, and of course he's happy that his son is back, so he's pretending, you're not a zombie, you just came back from the war, like you're perfectly fine. So he's like a total hypocrite, and of course even the people who are following him now are starting to doubt him, and it's just really difficult for everybody, including his wife is also like worried about him because like mentally having issues. Did you comment?
We mentioned Kieran's parents being kind of more accepting and supportive, even if they don't really know what to do. So then we have the flip side here, where there's
They're like, let's just ignore him.
it doesn't. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist.
It seems like at first he tries to delude himself into thinking that his son isn't actually a PDS sufferer, but then when it finally hits him, he can't really handle it, so he goes and he kills him basically, and because he's like, that's not my son.
Hope you don't mind spoilers.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't sure about that.
This is my first time on the panel.
Yeah, it was actually interesting what triggered him, I think, because he is it okay to mention Kieran, the reason Kieran died, or is that?
That's I think a spoiler.
Spoiler, yeah. Okay, I'm trying to
As few
avoid.
spoilers as possible, since most people haven't, or I think at least
Yeah.
haven't watched.
Maybe we should talk about Simon?
Yes.
Okay, so Simon is the guy that is on the right, yeah, on the far right there. So he's kind of a little bit more like Amy, where he's more of an extremist about zombies. So he's more pro being themselves, doesn't wear the makeup, tries to get other people to also follow, other PDS sufferers to follow his ways, where they remove their makeup, they show who they really are. And in fact, he's more of the opposite of Bill, but also kind of the same, in that he is so pro PDS sufferers and that they should be treated maybe even better than the humans or the living.
Yeah, 'cause they're like, it's like with the X-Men mutants, they're like, we're better than humans, we are involved a higher form.
And with that, there's a hierarchy to this. It's called the Rising, which is when these zombies came about. And there's the hierarchy as to who was the first risen and what that means in terms of who's the most important zombie. And so to this kind of man's religion, if you want to call it that, that becomes a very integral part of his mission and finding out who that is and what that means for that person and what that means for zombies in general, or these partially deceased syndrome sufferers.
And then, real quick before we move on to the next subject, Jem, his sister, we can talk about it again. So once again, his sister, who had joined the Human Volunteer Force, it's like this is very close to her for having her brother come back. So at first she's like angry at him, like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. You're a zombie. I've been fighting you. She's still kind of like, they're still kind of tracking wild zombies and getting them. So it's kind of interesting, like, and how she, for those who haven't watched it, you'll see her kind of change her mindset a little during the show.
The circumstances of Kieran's death also are part of the reason why she's angry. But that's a spoiler, so we can't tell you.
We'll try not to know. Yeah, so
you want to watch.
Yeah, so it's interesting to watch her come to terms, because it's like, especially for someone who's, say, I mean, this could be for a lot of things, but say, like, if you are coming out as gay, like, if your family doesn't understand, especially if your, like, family has had some bad experience with that, I don't know, like, gay people, I don't know, what would be better? Religious? I don't know. Basically, if you've had some bad experience with a person who decides to identify as something, even though it's not their choice, and clearly not his choice to become a zombie, well, anyway, I'm trying not to give spoilers.
There's a thing that happens and it's very important, and then there's another thing.
Yeah. So basically, it's interesting to see their interactions, and it's like like his parents are just like, we're so happy to have you back. This is great. Now we just want to protect you. With her, it's like, great, you've come back, and like I feel like you abandoned me for, and now you're like this thing that I fought against for so long. So for her, like you see them have discussions and kind of come to terms with it again, because they were pretty close, or they weren't, were they close as brother and sister? Yeah. They were very close. Okay, I'm like confusing this with other sibling relationships. And so it's interesting to see like how it changes and how they like get closer again after such a huge change has happened. Yes.
One thing I might want to point out is there's a big element of denial when all the risen start coming back. And so we see Bill, and he says, either A, this is not my son, or B, he's totally fine.
Exactly.
But Jem starts out and she says, you're not my brother, thus if you're a zombie, I can kill you, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's because Bill takes the line and says, it is my son, but he's totally fine. And Jem says, no, that's totally not my brother. I can't even start.
Exactly, yeah. So she basically, yeah, she doesn't really even acknowledge him much. So it's just, yeah. So it's basically interesting to see all the different sorts of things. And you can apply it to almost any sort of discrimination that we see in our world now. So we're going to go to The Walking Dead. Who's watched The Walking Dead?
That
First
counts.
episode?
Counts.
Okay. What do we want to talk about that?
So one thing that we've kind of seen pervasively through a lot of different kind of zombie films or TV shows or movies or books is this idea that it's not really the zombies that you're afraid of, it's the survivors. You know, I mean, zombies are bad, but they're predictable. You know, they're violent, they're going to come after you, they're going to come after you in droves, but they're not manipulative. They're not going to come after you with the intent to destroy you. Not just take your resources, but to completely destroy you. So that's kind of something that's interesting if we're talking about human nature and what that means. That you would think, in an apocalypse, wouldn't we survivors want to help each other, boost each other up, maybe form greater coalitions to fight these scary, undead, or infected monsters, depending on what kind of zombie you're looking at. So it's just kind of that's one main thing. You know, we think we're watching zombies, but we're really watching human nature and what that looks like when people are kind of pushed past the end of, you know, there's no food, there's no civilization, there's no society, there's nothing holding people together. Where's that glue gone, and what does that look like?
You want to say anything more? The Walking Dead? So yeah, that's basically a good example of classic zombies. They're dead, they're mindless, they're slow, like, and like she said, it really focuses more on the humans and their messed upness.
And even when they try to rebuild society, you know, how does it change? You know, we have our hot showers, this is great, but there's still that breakdown of now people have lived away from this, or you have people who come into your community who've lived away from this for so long that can you even reintegrate into society or create another society?
Yeah.
And maybe do you want to or do you not want to? You know, what is the new survival? What does that look like?
Okay, so Warm Bodies. Who's watched Warm Bodies? Good friend. If you guys can speak.
I actually really like this one because I wasn't really much into zombies myself, actually, but I think Warm Bodies and In the Flesh both, I really like them because they make you more sympathetic to the zombies and like why they do things, what are they doing. They're not just they're not entirely mindless. They at least like mention the instincts, because like in Warm Bodies they say that they eat brains to get the memories, to get emotions, because otherwise they don't like feel anything. And also there's the fact that they have two types of zombies in Warm Bodies. There's the bonies, I guess, which are supposed to symbolize the completely gone, just purely living to kill other beings, I guess, type of zombie. And they just look like skeletons, I think, right? Held together with barely skin. But then the other guys, zombies,
Zombies,
yeah.
the official term.
I'm not sure how to describe them other than like they look pretty much like typical zombies, except like maybe missing a piece of their body, or like look pale, but they look more human than the bonies guys, and they can identify each other. Like I think they do a narrative like where they're mentioning his thoughts, and even though they're just like grunting at each other, they're telling you what he's thinking, so you know that he actually has thoughts, even if he can't communicate them.
It's kind of like they're trapped in their decaying bodies where they can have thoughts and feelings, but they can't really do anything because the disease is just controlling them to do what they do.
Yeah, and so, again, it was very relatable to In the Flesh because, In the Flesh they didn't seem very coherent. I guess they did feel kind of trapped because they could remember things, but they weren't really in control, and later they regretted that, whereas in this case they might regret it as they're doing it, but they can't help it because that's their nature, and they're not exactly evil, they're just trying to survive just like everybody else. And it's also very interesting because, again, just like in the flesh, they've learned it's kind of like they have kind of a cure, although it's...
That comes later.
Yeah, it's...
I don't know if that's spoilers. Too late.
Sorry. But
as long as we don't say what
They go from cold bodies to warm bodies. It's not a spoiler.
yeah, okay, I'm gonna...
It's in the
finish
trailer.
it.
He's getting warmer. It says
Yeah,
downstairs.
I think that, like, their own advertisement is kind of, you can guess what happened. But,
I'm not gonna say how much or how, or, but...
and Molly had a good point about this also has its own kind of extremists. You want to talk about those, Molly?
I guess more like the Bonies are can be considered extremists, so they're prejudiced against the living is what you can say. They're like extreme religious people who are against gays or something like that. It's just discrimination against the living. I guess it's pretty much how you can say that.
And like how they aren't really able to, that's spoilers too.
They're
Basically,
too far gone.
yeah. So like, you know, like extremists that no matter what you do, you can't change their mind is basically what
They're
they've
set
become
in
at
their
that
ways.
point.
And then they want to convert everyone else.
Basically. Okay, and then we'll go on to,
So, this is kind of a new one.
who's watched it? Who's caught up with it? I'm not caught up with the most recent
I'm
episode of this week, but she is.
So this one, actually, initially, when I had seen the ad, I was like, this looks kind of silly. I don't know about this one. And then I watched the first episode, and for those of you who are not familiar with it, again, it's kind of the main character who's a promising med student goes to this party, and she kind of gets. Well, not herself. She's in this party. There are people who are maybe dabbling in some drugs and some nasty stuff, and
You guys like
the
parties.
cocktail of this drug and
College parties.
all right, let me punch the microphone. This drug and another ingredient causes these people to go basically rabid, and they sort of die. They sort of become zombies, but they're not mindless. They're not zombies that kind of, walk at you with just one thing in mind, that you look like a nice tasty platter of whatever.
They're not Walking Dead zombies.
Right. They're still completely aware of, they didn't die and become another kind of mindless creature. They're completely aware of who they are. So this now just becomes another aspect of their life. But it's the first, and please chime in if any of you have seen anything like this before, but it's the first zombie story I've seen where you kind of see zombies as heroes, not just zombies as villains, or zombies as kind of like scary monsters.
Kind of in the flesh a little.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not like quiet, like, because the main character, I'm kind of in warm body. Basically, I was like, those three, the in the flesh, warm bodies, and iZombie, you see more of like the romanticized zombies, which is kind of like, okay, well, we've had vampires getting all pretty, we've had werewolves getting all pretty, why not zombies? Like, why not? But yeah, but this is even, I feel like even, because at least those, they're just trying to like live more normally in those two, where this one, like she said, Liv, who's the med student.
Her name is Olivia Moore, and she goes by Liv Moore, so I gotta have nice little fun puns in there.
Exactly, and basically she goes and tries to use her zombie powers to help people, so...
Oh, integral to this story, and the reason why it works is when a zombie consumes a brain, they're able to kind of take on memories that are triggered by events that the person who died has seen or experienced.
Personalities of the person.
And personality traits as well.
Which is also really exciting in your family. When your family doesn't know that you can do this, and suddenly you're acting really motherly, or really like you can paint like really beautiful pictures, and they're just like...
Super drunk.
Yeah, or you become an alcoholic for like a week. You know, like...
Know some karate.
Your family is just kind of like, okay. But yeah, so... and that's interesting, because once again, like... While in that society, most people don't know about the existence of zombies, so they don't really have that much chance to be discriminated against. since she, like, some of them we see kind of cover it up, and like, you know, they'll dye their hair so they don't look as dead. But her, you can see, like, she just basically looks like this. So people will be like, make comments about her being like goth, or someone called her Beetlejuice. And so like, even though they don't even know she's a zombie, they're still like discriminating against her. So it's like, you don't even have to, just because you look like something, you don't even have to, like, nobody needs to know what you identify as, whatever your personal thing is. They'll just look at you and just make judgments. Yes.
I think the show's kind of a reverse racism, because it's the zombies, they have their own community, and they're kind of ignoring everything else that goes on that you would normally think would be a very vicious crime. Even, okay, I can't say that because that's a spoiler. Well, let's just say key people involved in the show, they're even covering up because they're just looking the other way.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the reverse. It's like, you're not one of us, so I don't care what happens to you.
Yeah. So if you guys haven't watched that, you should probably, because I definitely didn't think, I thought it was going to be ridiculous. And
I thought it was going to be stupid.
Yeah,
It's kind of interesting.
Something else that's kind of fun about this show is we see somebody. So the guy on the left, is that your left? Yeah. Robbie is really excited that Liv is a zombie and kind of wants to figure out how to solve it. So we kind of see zombie rats, and we see kind of like experimentation, and is there a way to reverse this? Is there a cure, if you want to say that? But there's also some other things with this show that are, you have to buy into the science, because some of the, like, okay, I can be a living, breathing, thinking human being, but I can also get shot and be fine, you know, like, I mean, assuming it's not in the head. You can kind of, there's no blood run, you know, you don't bleed, you know, so how does this, so you have to sort of just kind of accept that that's a thing.
Go with the flow.
Yeah. Like, they're zombies, but they're also not zombies.
There was a movie that's something similar to that. I can't remember which movie it was, because they had like their own community. But it was like when they would lose body parts, they'd go there to buy body parts and put them on.
Yeah, if you remember it.
I can't think of which movie it is either. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah.
And if anybody has any thoughts or things, you can
Yeah, we'll
chime
definitely
in.
have time for questions, but if you need to, if it's relevant.
If you're like, I'm super excited, I need to tell you this thing that I've been thinking about. Tell us.
Our next one is The Last of Us.
So, I really like this game. But this is, again, kind of, you get the survivalist aspect. So you follow these two survivors, Joel and Ellie, and they're unique.
Sorry, hold on. Who has played or watched walkthroughs of The Last of Us? Just real quick.
Oh, okay. So we'll get some more background. Or like a... Okay, well, so I'm not going to tell you Ellie's special thing. Those of you who have already played or know about this game will know. But there are special circumstances as to why she kind of takes this trek with Joel, who doesn't necessarily initially like her or want to deal with her at the beginning. But they're going across the U.S. and they're facing these creatures that are called, they're kind of infected. There are different stages. So you have runners who are, they just look like kind of rabid people. They don't look particularly different. Maybe they're bloody or a little bit nasty, but they're not different. And in this game, right? In this game, you're not undead. If you kill a human, they don't turn into a zombie. They have to be infected by these spores to then kind of take on this cordyceps fungus that changes them into this zombie. So there's an interesting progression of these zombies that further dehumanize them. So you kind of initially have this first stage where they're rabid, they're angry, they're dangerous, but they still look like humans. But then you kind of go along, and then they become these like nasty fungus beasts that are really a pain as you're playing through, and they're harder to kill. But you kind of see this progression from kind of human to like non-human or very dehumanized. But again, in this game, there's a lot to do with, you're really, you meet some pretty interesting characters that are not infected, and some of them are really interesting, depraved individuals. So you have a band of survivors that's operating in a city that they want resources, so they kind of stop people coming through, and they they just kill them. They just kill them, they take their stuff, and they go on with their life. But they do it in a way that's pretty
Messed up.
yeah, it's beyond just, okay, well, hey, you have a shirt, my shirt's ripped, I want your shirt. It's like execution style, you know, they don't care, they reroute you into where they can take your stuff and they take it.
Again, it kind of shows that or I guess I can't say living, the humans are more evil than the infected actually are. And pretty much, for one part of the game, you're fighting the infected, the clickers and all that stuff, and then the other part, you're fighting the humans, and then you go back and forth between fighting them, showing who's really evil and who's the enemy.
Yeah. I thought the scariest part of the game was not the infected. There's a character you meet called David, and he's, you know, you start out initially like, oh, this guy, you know, he's just the survivor, it's gonna be fine. Ellie's found kind of somebody who maybe not she can make friends with, but somebody who's gonna help her or get something she needs. And you find out, no, he has ulterior motives and they're really scary. So, you know, he comes from an interesting band of survivors. So, which you'll have to play the game to find out, or already know what I'm talking about.
And that's kind of interesting, because if you think about it, it's like these people have had to go through this thing to they basically don't really think of other people as humans, or maybe they don't even just think of them as on their level, but we have people like that now. Like, who will say, okay, well, if you're this religion, or if, you know, you're this skin color or whatever, you're basically less of a human than me, so I can do whatever I want to you. Like, I'm a good person when I'm around these people who are like me, but you're not as much of a person as I am, so it's okay if I take your stuff or do this to you, or, you know, like, we have people like that. It's kind of scary to think.
In the apocalypse, how much worse would they be?
How many more there could be?
Yeah, how many more? Like, some of it, yeah. All right, and our last one, oh, I probably should warn you guys, it's kind of creepy. But has anyone watched or read it? Was it also a manga?
It's only a manga.
It's only a manga. Oh, but Black Butler? Anyone? Anime / manga?
Oh, we have something else.
Yeah. So I guess this zombie arc is only in the manga?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, there were talk of maybe they might do it in the anime. I'm not really sure how that's going yet. I thought this was really interesting take on zombies because this was in the Victorian era, which is where Black Butler takes place. And there's actually in the story, since it's about a boy who basically is an earl and runs his household with the help of a demon butler, in exchange for his soul, of course. And there's also Grim Reapers involved, and they've like made a big deal about hating the demons. But basically, the reason for zombies in this series is because one of these Grim Reapers got bored, and it's like, humans have this life, and it's like a film strip to them. And at the end of their life, they review the film strip, kind of like your life flashing before your eyes. So he's like, what happens if somebody dies and you add more film strip? And so what he did is, he attached more film strip, and then he found out these bodies become animated again, but they don't really have like memories or a purpose or anything. So what they try to do, because they're missing a soul, because their soul departs when they die. So what they do is they try to go after people with souls so they can like make themselves whole, and that's why they attack humans, because they're trying to make themselves whole. And of course, you know, killing someone else doesn't give them their soul, but the zombies don't know that, it's just instinct. So basically they're just, he puts a bunch of living people on a boat with a bunch of zombies, and then sets the zombies free just to see what would happen, because he's a death god, a retired death god, so he's bored. But yeah, you can bet that ends well, and it basically becomes Titanic with half of the people zombies. Like they literally smashed the iceberg and everybody's drowning. So he's like, okay, my zombie experiment doesn't matter because the zombies are gonna, you know, drown. But of course, the people trying to survive in the water don't think that. So because he has like the main character has a demon butler, he can get through that. But it's just, I just thought it was very interesting how they went about the zombie thing. He called them bizarre dolls instead of zombies because again, Victorian era, they didn't really have names like zombies. And yeah, then there's like, you know, there's people who take up the fight, there's people who run away, people who push people in the way of the zombies to get away themselves.
We have some of those in this room. We were polling earlier.
Yeah, basically it's pretty much the same, you know, typical zombie thing, except for how they were made, and again, the differentiation in the instinct, but same thing about, you know, if they get shot in the head or their head gets crushed, then they die. So, I thought that was interesting.
That almost like the retired death god. It almost reminds me of someone like, just some like really rich people, just like do like, oh, I have a lot of money, I'm just gonna do this. And you're like, just because you have a lot of money and power, it doesn't really mean you should play with people's lives like that.
Yeah.
But
I feel like you sold it though when you're like Titanic, but zombies. Like, who wouldn't want to watch that?
And the other death gods are like so mad at him because he's messing everything up, and they're like, the dead are taking the lives of the living. So it's like, this is just a ton of paperwork, because to them it's all paperwork. That's all the humans are, so.
inconvenience. All right, so those are the main ones that we had to talk about. So is there anything, did anyone have questions, comments, additions? Yes.
Oh, from
What?
who's the dog?
Oh, my polar bear dog, Naga, from Legend of Korra.
Legend of what?
Legend of Korra.
Which is amazing if you haven't seen it.
Yes.
Not related to zombies, but also
No, but don't expect zombies, I hope. But go ahead.
The reason why, so many people say, oh, I'm so over zombies, but I love about zombies is, I mean, werewolves represent, you know, the beast inside.
Yeah.
Zombies are actually a reflection of any sort of society. I mean,
Yes.
in the flesh, we're looking at it and we're seeing, you know, the undead living next to the people who are fighting them, which is
Exactly.
very European because they lived through basically
Yeah.
the apocalypse and it's deeply
Yeah.
rooted in their culture.
Exactly.
Walking Dead shows us how quickly, you know, we become we. I mean, just imagine if the zombie apocalypse happened out there, I could imagine us becoming a we and anyone
Exactly.
trying to get our stuff, they're them.
Yeah, they're on the outside. Each panel will fight each other. So, but you guys are on the zombie panel, so you guys better all be good at fighting zombies. You're my team now. But yeah, that's a really good point. Like, especially the thing about Europe, because especially in the US, it's kind of hard to think about, but like there's so many countries all right next to each other, and especially with things like World War II, World War I, like they've happened, and some people are still alive from both of those, and it's still like kind of a big deal for them.
And then iZombie Now,
iZombie.
for anyone who's seen it, is really quite a reflection of those that have and those that can do. And that's quite telling about what we're saying about our society right
Yes, yeah, that is true. Thank you. Yes.
How exactly are animals displayed in the show? Are they just animals? Do they become anything?
Animals
in the flesh specifically, or in
In the flesh.
And in the flesh.
they?
Like they contract the zombie gene to become zombies. It's like in The Walking Dead, you don't see zombie animals.
Yeah.
Animals don't turn into zombies.
Yeah, they'll get eaten by zombies. They get shot, but they don't turn
They
into
don't
them.
actually turn because I mean,
Yeah.
if they're half alive.
I don't remember seeing any kind of zombie animals at all. I don't really remember. I mean, you see like sheep on the hillside because it's Lancashire.
Because it's not a I thought it was that there weren't very many animals around because the zombie, when they were zombies and not treated, they were going after anything that was flesh.
Yeah.
Right, but the animals themselves, I don't think
the animals themselves, I don't think became zombies or anything.
Yeah.
Did you?
Because in the flesh, they only people who were buried
Yeah.
rose out of the grave. It was not like an
That's
infection
true.
or anything. So like, I don't think dead animals.
That's
It was
true.
more like
No
a
pet
one-time
cemeteries around.
That was another part of it. It was more like a one-time thing, and
Yeah.
if people got bit,
It was in the best.
Yeah, they never
That's true. Like Molly just
one
mentioned, if
area.
people get bit, and that's one of the things that they make a point of it in the flesh. I totally forgot. Thank you, Molly. Is that like they're like, no, you can't turn into a zombie if you get bitten. It was only those people. If you die now, you're not going to turn into a zombie.
Yeah.
If somebody who was a zombie bites you, you're not going to turn into a zombie. Like you're fine. So that was also really interesting because like just that one time rising. That's why it's called the rising. So yes.
Oh, okay. What do you think about, I mean, you had the slide with Amy and Simon, and you kind of meet these two characters, thanks. And so you have the main character who's just doing his thing, and so you have the one aspect of these zombies, it's like, oh, this is the happy, bubbly, it's pretty cool kind of life
Yeah.
gal. And then
Then super serious man comes in.
We're not going to get into too much detail. He's a really intense side. And he introduces Kieran. He's like, look at all this stuff you can do, look at all of this. And it gets kind of frightening at some point because they're like, we are so much better than these humans. Do you think there's a point to be made that some small groups like that, like even in iZombie, where they start saying, they don't accept us, so we won't accept them, and it becomes very rigid?
That is a good
Look at
point.
the last
Yeah.
episode of iZombie, they started touching on that one.
Yeah. Do you guys want
I
to?
didn't see what it was.
Gotta wait till next season.
But yeah, because you see, like we were saying earlier, with Amy being like, she's like proud, you know, she's the kind of person who might like go to a pride festival and be like, look, I'm awesome, this is great, whatever I am, it's good, like, I love me, if you guys don't love me, whatever. Not that it's always that easy, like, even if you love yourself and you don't care what other people think, it still sometimes hurts the way that they can act towards you. But then, yeah, and then Simon is like, okay, I'm awesome, but I'm really awesome. So, and there are people like that who are like, okay, yes, I'm this marginalized group, but you know what? We're better than all of you. So now we're going to like take control kind of thing. And you're like, I don't think that's very nice of you. Like, just because people have been mean to you doesn't mean like you should go be mean back.
I think it also blurs the lines between what is good and what's not, you know. So you have a marginalized group of people that maybe have been discriminated against, but then for the sake of their discrimination or kind of as a product of what's happened to them, then they're like, well, I don't necessarily wouldn't in another context have a problem with you, but because you've hurt me, now I have to hurt you. So kind of that, you know, where do you draw the line?
And that's another thing is that Amy, with her personality, won't necessarily go against, like, she won't necessarily go to, like, fight back against the people that have hurt her. You know, there are a lot. While Simon will be like, we're going to go beat up this person. Also, this person who hasn't really done anything directly to us, but they're still a human, so they probably will in the future. We're going to go beat them up too. I mean, not beat them, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't necessarily go and beat them up. But, like, that's his attitude is like, you know what? They're all humans. They're all bad. If they haven't done it bad yet, they probably will be mean to us anyways, eventually, so.
We have to preempt them.
Yeah. Well, whereas Amy is just like, whatever, I just want to be me and just be me and like whatever, like, so long as those people leave me alone, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I think in you discussing or bringing up blurred lines, it really is a blurred line, especially with the human volunteer force, because they are war heroes. They're the ones who helped the living survive this terrible.
They suffered, yeah. So it's not.
And so they personally feel discriminated against because they suffered through this. But then somebody that they fought against is now being treated with the same respect, I guess, or they feel more respect, and it kind of makes it hard and to see which side you really want to be with.
That's a really good point, because we don't get too much exposure to, I mean, we have some kind of extremists from the human volunteer force, but you don't really get their story. You get a little bit of gems and kind of the context for that, but they almost become sort of a mini villain where, you know, because you're not experiencing it with the character, because a lot of times we can identify with the character much more if we start out at the beginning and, okay, now they're mean and they're terrible, but, you know, things had to happen for that to manifest, and so we don't really get to see that side as much as, you know, we could. So that's a really good point too. There's not, you know, pure villains or pure heroes in this story or in many stories that we've talked about. You made a noise. I thought you were going to say something exciting.
I was thinking of saying, like, this, I feel like the whole thing is about blurred lines, because I mean, zombies themselves, like, are they dead or alive? That in itself is a blurred line, right? And then, yeah, people don't know how to accept them, and I feel like the idea of the infections, like if somebody bites someone, or even just the fear of it, is like paralleling how people feel, like, for example, someone's sexuality, they feel like, oh, if this person hangs out with them, then they're gonna turn.
I'm gonna catch it.
Yeah, like it's like a disease. And again, I feel like that's like it's such a silly thing, because I mean, like, okay, like ideas are catching, yeah, but it's up to that person to decide whether or not what they think of it themselves. And the extremists, again, I feel like they don't they just like everyone must listen to us and nobody else can exist, and it's just again it's like the enemies of the blurred lines are the extremists for a reason, because the blur is where the normal average people who are trying to live their daily lives is. And while we may be taught that like all good is the way to go, like there's only one right way, I think too much of anything, whatever your belief, is bad. So I think like even how Simon was considering himself a protagonist trying to help the other zombie people and to give them self-confidence, it's still he's against
when you're putting other people down just to like, yes, love yourself, but if you're going to put other people down to accept yourself, that's...
You're doing exactly what the other people are doing. You're not solving the problem.
Yeah. So it's interesting how they have to have a balance.
Anyone else? Any other zombie media you want to bring up? Has anyone ever participated in a zombie walk before? Have you ever had like random non-Phoenix Comicon civilians being like, why are you guys so weird, or like doing weird stuff just because?
It's work every day.
Yeah, because it's even like us people who dress up for Comicon. Like some people will be like, you're so cool, and then some people will be like, oh my god,
what are you doing?
He's on the other side of the street. Like, and you're like, I'm just dressed up, I'm not doing anything to hurt you, but like, why are you so freaked out?
Well, I guess that's the thing, is it's somebody saying, I know one aspect about you, so I now know everything about you.
Exactly.
It's like, not at all. You haven't even scratched the surface of who I am.
There's a cookie cutter version of
Yeah.
something, which there's no cookie cutter version of anything, except cookie cutter.
Right.
But otherwise.
But even when you use cookie cutters, they don't all sound the same. So
My little snowman cookie looked like a circle. not 3, 1.
snowball.
Use more flour.
Okay, thank you. Baking with zombie panelists.
Wow, that would be interesting.
Join us next time.
Yes.
I'm just going forever, but do you guys have an opinion on like stories like Frankenstein and Herbert West are the two that come to mind? They're kind of a little older, but we see this
Herbert
theme-
West. What is Herbert West?
Herbert West Reanimator. It's a Lovecraft story originally, and there's probably multiple different versions throughout the years. But it's basically a Frankenstein story. He digs up dead bodies and tries to create something.
That's fun.
So it's, in those ones you don't see a lot of concentration on the monster, or depending on the Lovecraft account, but it's like, here's the human, and he's a horrible person because of this. So do you think there's some sort of, like they're specifically saying the humans are bad, no, there's a monster, but it doesn't matter because it's not smart like these humans. And that just changed over the years to become this zombie.
That's true, because I mean, when people think of the monster in Frankenstein, a lot of the times, if they haven't like read the book or watched something that's actually true to the book, they'll just think, oh, he's this mindless guy who's scary and built from dead body parts, and he's huge and like, ah. But then when you read it, you're like, wow, this guy basically starts out like as a kid. If this is spoilers, it's too bad, because go read Frankenstein. But if you don't sort of know the story of Frankenstein, you probably should, but it's okay. But yeah, he's basically starts out as a child. He's like this innocent kid. Yeah, he's freaky, but that's because you made him freaky looking, Frankenstein. Like, that's your fault, and you're the one who gets grossed out by him. Like,
Actually, can I mention something really quick? I'm pretty sure he made him to be beautiful. That's the thing. Like, he took the prettiest parts.
that's what he says when he's making it. He's like, and I chose it so beautiful, but then suddenly when it was finished,
I think that might have been part of the metaphor, though. It's like he could have really looked actually beautiful, but to him it was scary, so that's why to him it made him ugly. Like, he might not have actually visually been ugly. It might have just been the movie that made you think that.
Exactly. Yeah. So because once he finds out, then he's like, oh my god, I made this person alive, and now suddenly, ugh, he's ugly, he's scary, I don't like him. And the little monster, not little, but giant monster is just like, Daddy, and he's like, oh my god, I'm running away. And the guy's like, Daddy, come back. And now he's like, these are not quotes, so if you're looking for these quotes, it's not
a fan fiction version.
And so yeah, so basically he gets like getting kicked out of the house for what you know, like whatever you are, but he's like basically in the mindset of a kid, so he goes out and he's learning stuff. He falls in love with this human family, and then they basically judge him on how he looks. So I guess maybe he does actually look ugly since his family is freaked out by how he looks, or
stitches, you know.
yeah, but it's like he learns how to be, he learns negative emotions from humans. Like when he starts out, he's just fascinated by life and everything. He wants to learn so much. He wants to learn language. He wants to communicate with these people. He wants to help these people. He wants to do he wants to make his daddy proud. But like, it's the way that humans react to him that makes him like, oh God, I am a monster. Well, fine. If everyone's gonna treat me like that, then I'm gonna go like be a monster. So it's like really sad. Of course, then you know you could argue, well, if he had chosen not to be a monster, or at least not act like one, maybe things could have turned out better. But then again, with the way the people are, probably not.
Yeah,
probably would have turned out bad no matter what.
It's an interesting discourse on, because we see the same thing with children. You know, you don't really see children who hate anybody. They want to play with everyone. They want to have fun. They don't, you know, it's not an issue with where you came from, what you look like. It's just you're, you know, fun. I'm fun. Let's do fun things together. And so that a lot of this hatred and this kind of discrimination is taught or learned. It's not something that's inherently in a child. I don't know, you could say maybe inherently human, which is maybe cynical and scary, but it's not something that, you know, it's something that you have to learn. It's not something that's
kids learning
imbued in you
social cues from adults.
Yeah.
The adults making faces or saying something, and then they're like, oh, well, if that person thinks that's bad, then I guess it's bad.
I look up to this person and they feel that way, so maybe it's right.
That's good one. Yeah, because sometimes I forget to think of him as a zombie, but I actually took a class that was about zombies, among other things, and the teacher considered that a zombie book. I'm like, that's true. I mean, he's the reanimated dead, even though he's multiple pieces, but he's still technically, you know. Okay, anything else?
I think some of the characters that we've met along the way in this discussion have kind of interesting paths as well, because speaking about Joel in particular from The Last of Us, you get kind of this well, you don't get all of his backstory, but you see one pivotal event that kind of sets the stage for some of the relationships as it moves on. But there are certain kind of conversations between some of the characters where you hear that some of the things he's done to survive, he's not necessarily proud of. You know, he's been on both sides, which is one of the things he says. So not both sides as in infected and not infected, but as in, you know, people who are viciously trying to survive without any kind of care for what anybody else is experiencing, and then people who are, you know, maybe in a better band of survivors in that they're not as violent. So you get kind of these characters that are, even within themselves, you get kind of this push and pull. What is good? Am I good? Do I want to be good? What does that look like? How do I do this? Can I switch sides in the middle? Is that something that I want to do? And kind of, there's a much more kind of rich depth to a lot of these characters that in certain stories we get to explore, in certain stories we get tastes of, and hopefully in well-written stories you get more of it. But. Yes.
Yes.
Or a really intense stretch.
What is your guys' take on the zombies from Z Nation?
That I have not. Is it clearly I don't know. It's a movie.
It's a movie.
What?
Yeah, we
have you
haven't.
watched it?
TV
Z
show.
Nation.
No,
No, TV show.
Oh, it's
TV
a
show.
show.
World War Z, I think you're
World War Z.
Yes, okay. Just sorry.
Would you like to summarize Z Nation for us with as little spoileriness as possible?
You've got a band of people
It's
that have to get from
point of
Hawaii
kind of
on
like
the
The
east side
Walking
on the east coast of the U.S. to the west side of the U.S. And there's a guy who's kind of monitoring everything. His satellites are still working. There's just nobody to work them. And he's kind of watching where they go because they have to get
Just one
they have to get one person to where it is. And it give away in spoilers if I tell you why they have to take this person from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And they meet, you know, other dead people, they meet other survivors, and it's not exactly like Walking Dead, but it kind of has elements of it.
Is the zombie trope similar in the sense that they're just kind of mindless dead?
kind of zombie?
Yeah, there's a mindless zombie.
It's very similar to The Last of Us.
Oh, so maybe I know why they're moving this person or this group.
But, yeah.
It's not, that reveals the first episode.
Okay.
No, it's not, because they do it too, Pam, when they first
Yeah,
get
and he's actually not,
a nice person.
he's not a nice person, he's a very bad person, but he actually lives through this, so they need to find out why. Well, actually, they know why.
Oh, so he gets infected
He
but
gets
survives.
infected, yeah, but he survives. But the thing that is really good about it is that zombies react to him as well as humans.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a key point. I haven't seen in any other movie besides, or TV show besides Z Nation.
That's cool. And did that just start?
Is it
They only have
last-
one on Netflix right now. It's like
I didn't know
sci-fi.
that.
It's not cancer, it's
Like
like
next season in July.
Right. It's nice that kind of you get all these different things that there's just one piece that's different. They
And yet, yeah, they can say like really interesting.
did you
The Z Nation premise with that guy kind of follows the Land of the Dead premise, where if you, I'm going to spoiler it.
Cover your ears if you need to.
There's one particular zombie that starts learning things.
Oh, yes.
And he starts leading and educating the other zombies. This guy that's like half zombie, half human, that's in this middle state, he can lead and teach the other zombies and control them and stop them from being mindless zombies and automatically attacking people.
Right.
And he does it with just the influence of his mind. But he can also do other things too. It's a horrible show for the first 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Keep going. Which was the Z Nation is horrible for the 6th episode?
Yeah, you actually
After
gotta.
the 6th episode, it gets great.
Yeah, you gotta be a dedicated sci-fi person to get through
It's
the beginning
horrible,
of it.
like Sharknado's horrible.
Yeah,
It's
so
like
it
sci-fi.
is. You actually sit there and watch it because you're like, God, something's gotta happen.
Yeah.
I was gonna
It's
say,
good
like,
though to have that caveat going in because sometimes you're like, I don't know, maybe I'm just weird. Why don't I like this? It sounded like it was gonna be good.
Yeah.
I was sick, and if I could have reached the remote, I never would have.
I actually started watching it because I was stuck in bed too.
Yeah.
So this is a good thing when you're sick. You feel like a zombie, so you're forced to watch a zombie show.
Right, so every time somebody says, oh, I've seen Z Nation, oh, I'm so sorry. Did you get that?
Made it to the first half of the season.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it does really get a lot better.
Awesome.
And there are zombie animals in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's something we didn't touch on at all.
Well, because somebody asked about zombie animals.
Yeah.
But yeah, with most of these, you don't really.
Yeah,
In things like Resident Evil, though, you get some exciting.
Resident
Oh,
Evil is
Resident
the only
Evil.
one I know.
And they're coming out with a new one.
Yay!
They're coming out with another Resident Evil.
Yeah, that one's more like a virus, right?
Yeah. A human man-made virus because we decided to play God.
Yes, that's all.
Humans rock.
What other? There's another thing that has zombie animals.
Evidently, I Am Legend. She just said, I Am Legend has zombie animals.
Oh, I forgot about that in this
I
one.
completely forgot.
I didn't watch.
I'm just thinking
I
about
don't know. Who is afraid of zombie movies but likes to watch them because they're cool? Because
Don't scary zombie
it's
movies.
scary, but
Yeah, I'll admit,
Slightly
I'm not too fond of zombie movies except for the ones like I can figure out more of their like how they think because either I get bored with like just they're attacking people or I really dislike how they show humans at each other's throats because I would probably be one of the people who would like just like go ahead and kill me because I don't like
I want to deal with you guys.
yeah, I don't like the idea of like what people do to
Like,
survive.
we're supposed to be friends. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's really hard for me because I try to empathize and just so
It is hard to empathize with a lot of classic zombies.
yeah, or people who are trying to survive and just like
I don't know.
kill
I'm hangry sometimes. Not for brains, but.
That's why it also though fascinates me how people are interested in zombies and why. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm curious.
So you're gonna like do a psychological study on everyone?
Yes.
Everything yourselves.
Yeah, I think we've talked about a lot of psychological stuff too, right? So it's really
And it
interesting.
is 5:30, but I think someone had one last comment.
I was just gonna say, and it's always been that way, because if you look at the Night of the Living Dead, the guy survives the night, the black guy survives the night, and the white sheriff just shoots him. Yeah, spoiler, I'm sorry, the movie's like, what, 40 years old?
You haven't watched it?
It's
Too
kind of
bad.
like Night of the Comet. You've got the
Yes.
survivors who survived, and it's our own government
And
that's
then
going to kill the first part.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
so it's like, hey, what's
Yeah, there's so
oh,
many.
I love the ending of the.
Thank you all for coming and for having a great discussion with us. So enjoy the rest of con.
You guys are awesome. Go spread the zombie energy.
The zombie ball.
Yes, no, I
And
think
catch others with the zombie shows.
I do one other thing. Oh, you have something to say? Yeah.
No, I did that.